On my 31st birthday, my beloved Aunt Clara handed me a certified check for $250. 000. Less than 10 minutes later, my own brother locked the heavy mahogany doors of his private estate study and demanded I hand it over to him immediately. When I flatly refused, he slapped me viciously across the face and threatened to call the state police to have me arrested for theft. I managed to escape the house and drove straight to the highest federal bank branch in the city. But when the senior branch manager scanned that certified check, his face drained of all color. He locked his glass office door and told me, in a trembling voice, that I was the primary target of a federal money laundering investigation. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to toxic, entitled relatives who underestimated your worth. I am Zoe, a 31-year-old director of global compliance for one of the largest multinational banks in the world, and I am about to show you what happens when the family scapegoat decides to play the corporate game and win. The heavy oak doors of my brother Marcus's upscale downtown estate slammed shut with a sickening thud. The metallic click of the brass lock turning echoed sharply through the silent, expensive study. I stood at the end of the leather-bound desk, still holding the crisp piece of paper Aunt Clara's private lawyer had just handed me. It was a certified check for $250,000. The ink was barely dry, but the unadulterated greed in my brother Marcus's eyes was already boiling over. Marcus was 35 years old and the celebrated, self-proclaimed face of political excellence in our state. He was a rising state senator, wearing custom-tailored Italian suits that cost more than my first year of college tuition, and his heavy platinum watch caught the light from the crystal chandelier hanging above us. But beneath that flashy, polished political exterior, he was the exact same entitled, arrogant bully he had been since our childhood. "Give it to me, Zoe," he demanded. His voice was low, but edged with a dangerous kind of frantic panic. He took a heavy step toward me, holding out his open hand expectantly. "That money was explicitly promised to me. It is for the new Urban Development Political Action Committee. You are just a glorified compliance calculator. You do not need that kind of liquid cash. Hand it over right now." I gripped the check tighter. The thick paper felt like a protective shield in my hand. I looked from Marcus to his wife, Vanessa, who was leaning against the grand archway of the study. Vanessa was just draped in high-end designer labels from head to toe, wearing a silk evening gown that belonged on a Paris runway, not at a somber family meeting regarding a recently deceased aunt. She rolled her manicured eyes and crossed her arms tightly, looking at me like I was a piece of garbage that had blown in from the street and ruined her pristine carpet. I shot back, my voice remarkably steady, despite the adrenaline pumping through my veins. "Is that what we are calling it now, Marcus? A political action committee? Is that what you call the brand new armored luxury SUV parked in the circular driveway? Because as a director of global compliance, I know a fraudulent money pit when I see one. You are not building community housing for your constituents. You are funding your own lavish billionaire lifestyle while hiding behind your political title." Marcus's face twisted with rage, the polished charismatic state senator mask shattered into a million pieces. "You think you are so smart just because you manage corporate rules for rich bankers?" He sneered, taking another aggressive step closer. "You are nothing in this powerful family, Zoe. You are a 31-year-old single spinster who only shows up to make everyone else uncomfortable." Aunt Clara was confused at the end. "She meant for that money to go to my senatorial campaign fund." "She explicitly named me as the sole beneficiary, Marcus," I said, firmly standing my ground. "She knew what she was doing. She knew you were draining this family dry. I am not giving you a single dime of her money, so you can pay off whatever shady underground debts you have actively racked up this time." I did not even see his hand move. The slap was so fast and so hard that it sounded like a literal gunshot in the closed, silent room. The brutal force of the blow threw me off balance. My vision flashed white with intense pain as my head snapped to the side. I stumbled backward awkwardly, my high heels catching on the thick edge of the expensive Persian rug. I crashed hard into the heavy marble side table displaying Marcus's expensive bronze sculptures. A heavy bronze eagle statue tumbled off the edge and shattered the glass table underneath me, sending sharp shards scattering across the dark hardwood floor. A searing pain shot up my left arm as I landed awkwardly in the wreckage, but I refused to drop the certified check. I held on to it like my life depended on it. Oh my goodness. Vanessa shrieked, stepping carefully away from the dangerous mess. Do not bleed on my imported rug, Zoe. Are you crazy? Look what you did to the expensive table. Just hand over the money and get out of here before you break anything else. I tasted hot copper in my mouth, blood was trickling slowly from my cut lip. I looked up at my brother, who was standing directly over me, breathing. His large fists were clenched tightly at his sides. Hand over the check, Zoe, Marcus commanded, his voice shaking with furious, unbridled entitlement. Hand it over right now, or I am calling the state police. I will tell them you lost your mind because you were cut out of the primary trust fund. I will tell them you physically attacked me and tried to steal campaign funds. Who do you think the police will believe? The respected state senator or the bitter, jealous sister? He reached into his tailored pocket and pulled out his phone, waving it in my bruised face. Vanessa nodded in agreement, pulling out her own gold-plated phone to back him up. I will record the whole thing, she threatened with a malicious, terrifying smile. We will show the state how crazy you really are. Give him the check. They actually thought I would fold. They thought the long years of being pushed aside, talked down to, and treated poorly like the family scapegoat had broken my independent spirit. They fully expected me to cry, to apologize profusely, and to hand over my only inheritance just to keep the toxic family peace. But the old Zoe, who used to beg for their approval, died a long time ago. I wiped the blood from my cut lip with the back of my hand. I slowly pushed myself up off the floor, ignoring the sharp sting of glass scraping painfully against my bare skin. Marcus smirked arrogantly, clearly thinking I was about to surrender. He reached his hand out, expecting me to place the check directly into his palm. Instead, I grabbed the heavy bronze eagle sculpture that had fallen next to me and brought it down with every ounce of strength I had, smashing it directly onto his custom leather shoe. Marcus let out a deafening, agonizing shout of pain and stumbled backward, clutching his crushed foot. Vanessa screamed loudly, dropping her expensive phone as she lunged to help him. I did not waste a single precious second. I grabbed my designer purse from the floor, unlocked the heavy brass side door, and bolted out of the house. The humid southern air hit my face as I sprinted down the long driveway toward my parked car. I could hear Marcus shouting terrifying obscenities from the grand doorway, yelling that I was a thief and a failure, and that I would pay for this. I jumped into my car, locked the heavy doors instantly, and started the loud engine. My hands were shaking, so badly I could barely grip the leather steering wheel. I peeled out of the driveway, leaving dark tire marks on the pristine pavement, and sped dangerously down the suburban street. My heart was hammering against my ribs, my cheek was throbbing painfully from where Marcus had struck me. But as I glanced down at the passenger seat, where the certified check lay safely inside my purse, a sudden chilling realization washed over me. Aunt Clara was a retired librarian. She lived a modest, quiet life. She actively clipped grocery coupons and drove a 15-year-old sedan. Where on earth did she get $250,000 in liquid cash to leave to me? And why was Marcus so willing to commit assault to get it back? I needed answers, and I needed them immediately. I drove straight past my secure high-rise apartment and headed directly to the downtown financial district. I was not going to let Marcus spin this false narrative. I was going to securely deposit these funds, and then figure out what my powerful brother was hiding. The frantic drive into downtown felt like a blur of blaring horns and red lights. My analytical mind raced, trying to piece together the confusing fragments of the last few weeks. Aunt Clara had been acting strangely right before her sudden passing. She had been asking me specific, detailed questions about corporate tax evasion structures and offshore banking accounts. At the time, I foolishly thought she was just taking a polite interest in my intense career as a global compliance director. I had thoroughly explained how corporate shell companies worked and how illicit funds were moved to avoid federal detection. Now those innocent conversations felt like a giant, terrifying red flag. She was not just making polite conversation, she had asked for a professional consultation, because she knew something was fundamentally wrong. I parked my car and ran inside the glass building. I bypassed the crowded waiting area of the Federal Reserve Bank branch and walked directly toward the glass-paneled corner office of the senior branch manager. Mr. Harrison was a meticulous, strict man with decades of high-level banking experience. He had always respected my severe financial acumen. When he looked up from his dual computer monitors and saw me standing in his doorway, his welcoming, polite smile instantly vanished. "Zoe, what on earth happened to your face?" he asked, standing up so quickly his heavy leather chair hit the back wall. "You look like you were in a car accident. Do I need to call a medical team?" I shook my head firmly and closed the heavy glass door firmly behind me, ensuring we had complete, impenetrable privacy. "I am fine, Mr. Harrison. I do not need a doctor. I need your professional help with a sensitive transaction, and I need it done quietly and immediately." I walked over to his large mahogany desk and placed the certified check right in the exact center of his clean blotter. I gently smoothed out the slight creases my trembling, frantic fingers had made. "I need to deposit this directly into my secure holding account. It is an unexpected inheritance from my beloved aunt. She passed away last week, and her private lawyer just handed this directly to me." Mr. Harrison adjusted his expensive wire-rimmed glasses and leaned forward. I watched his trained eyes scan the handwritten amount, $250,000. He nodded sympathetically, clearly assuming this was a straightforward bereavement deposit. But as his eyes moved slowly down to the specific routing numbers, printed at the bottom of the check, his demeanor changed. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking pale and terrified. He looked from the check to my bruised, bleeding face and back again. His hands began to visibly shake. He reached out and snatched the check off the wooden desk, holding it tightly close to his chest as if it were a live, ticking grenade. He scrambled over to the large windows and quickly pulled the heavy cord, snapping the horizontal blinds shut to block anyone in the lobby from seeing inside. He rushed to the door and turned the heavy deadbolt lock with a loud click. "Zoe," he whispered, his voice cracking with panic. "Please tell me you did not personally write this check. Please tell me you have no knowledge of the origin of these funds. Because if you do, I am legally obligated to call the federal authorities right this exact second." I stared at him, bewildered and confused. "What are you talking about, Mr. Harrison? It is a certified check from my Aunt Clara. Her lawyer literally gave it to me not an hour ago. Why are you locking the door?" He walked back to his desk and turned his large computer monitor so I could see the screen. He rapidly typed in the complex routing sequence from the check and hit enter. A bright red banner flashed across his secure banking software, displaying urgent warning codes and federal hold notices. "Zoe," he said, his voice dropping to a harsh, terrified whisper. "This check is not drawn from your aunt's personal savings. It is not a retirement account or a life insurance payout. This check is drawn directly from an offshore corporate shell account. An account that is currently holding over $12 million. My heart dropped into my stomach. $12 million. That was mathematically impossible. My family was wealthy by local political standards, but they did not have $12 million sitting in liquid cash offshore. And that is not the worst part," he continued, pointing a trembling, terrified finger at the red warning banner on his screen. "This specific corporate entity was red flagged by the Internal Revenue Service 48 hours ago for severe, international money laundering. The funds are actively tied to a federal investigation." I leaned against the thick edge of his desk, my knees feeling weak. But how did Aunt Clara get a check from a cartel money laundering account? She was a retired quiet librarian. Mr. Harrison looked at me with a terrifying mixture of profound pity and terror. He took a deep breath. "Because Zoe, the registered owner of this illicit corporate shell company, The sole proprietor who is legally responsible for the $12 million of dirty money sitting in this account is you. The corporate ID matches your social security number. This is your account. The room started to spin, a high-pitched ringing filled my ears, drowning out the soft, rhythmic hum of the air conditioning. My identity, my secure social security number. Suddenly, all the confusing pieces snapped together with horrifying clarity. Marcus. 3 years ago, Marcus had come to me begging for professional help with a real estate tax issue for his political campaign. He claimed he needed my elite professional credentials to verify some community development forms for the state. Like a loyal blind sister, I had provided my signature, my social security number, and my elite financial advisory license details. I trusted him. I trusted my parents, who assured me Marcus was doing important public service. They had not built a community center. Marcus had stolen my identity. He used my pristine financial record and elite professional license to secretly set up a labyrinth of complex offshore shell companies. He was actively laundering millions of dollars of campaign donations and illicit corporate bribes right under the noses of his constituents. He deliberately put everything in my name so that when the federal government finally caught on, I would be the target going to federal prison. I was the designated disposable fall guy. I looked down at the certified check again, carefully reading the specific memo line. Aunt Clara had written a short phrase in her shaky handwriting, Proverbs 11:1. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. Aunt Clara had found out. She must have miraculously discovered Marcus's hidden ledger or accidentally overheard a terrifying conversation. She knew my brother was actively framing me for a multi-million-dollar federal crime. But why this exact amount? Why $250? Then I remembered a terrifying rumor I had heard from a political insider, a client, weeks ago. Marcus had borrowed from a dangerous underground corporate syndicate to cover his illegal gambling debts, and the final balloon payment was $250,000. Aunt Clara did not miraculously leave me an inheritance. She left me a terrifying warning. She intentionally triggered this withdrawal to force me to come directly to the bank and discover the illicit shell account before the FBI kicked down my apartment door. She used Marcus's own debt money to expose his criminal empire directly to me. "We have to freeze it," I said, my voice suddenly sharp and authoritative. "Mr. Harrison, you have to freeze my complete access to this account immediately. I did not open this LLC. My brother stole my identity. I can lock the digital portal from this terminal," he said, his frantic fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard. "But Zoe, you do not understand the gravity of this terrifying situation. The federal authorities are already watching this money. The exact moment this check was scanned into our secure system, it sent an automated ping directly to the Federal Financial Crimes Unit. They know that you are here." I pulled out my secure federal tablet from my expensive torn purse. My analytical mind instantly shifted into aggressive survival mode. I was a top-tier global compliance director. I knew how to trace money and securely lock it down. If Marcus thought he could make me the sacrificial lamb for his greed, he severely underestimated my terrifying skills. I instantly bypassed the local bank's network and used my own secure cellular hotspot. Since the illicit shell company was legally registered in my name, I initiated a master password reset. If I was going to be blamed for $12 million of dirty money, I was going to ensure Marcus could not access a single, solitary penny of it to fund his political escape. "I need you to print out the ultimate beneficial owner registry for this specific account," I commanded, snapping into my severe corporate persona. "I need physical, undeniable proof that these illicit funds were routed through my brother's secure IP address. He has been running this operation from his state office. I can prove it if I have the transaction timestamps." Mr. Harrison quickly hit print on his large machine. The printer hummed to loud life, turning out long pages of damning financial records. "Zoe, you need to take these documents and go straight to the Federal Bureau of Investigation," he urged, stacking the warm papers and shoving them into a heavy manila folder. "Do not go home. Do not go to your family. You need to turn yourself in as a victim of identity theft." before they issue a warrant for your incredible arrest. Suddenly, flashing blue and red lights reflected against the closed blinds. The bright strobes painted the small walls in an eerie glow. The loud wail of police sirens cut through the heavy silence. Mr. Harrison peeked through the slats and gasped loudly. The federal agents are already here, but as I looked out, I saw local state police cruisers blocking the exit. My phone buzzed with a text from my angry father, Richard. Come to the family estate immediately. Marcus just reported you to the state police for grand larceny and elder abuse. You have disgraced this incredible family. The cold steel of the heavy handcuffs dug into my wrists as I sat in the windowless interrogation room. The walls were painted an sickly institutional green, and the single fluorescent bulb buzzed with an irritating hum. I stared at the scarred metal table in front of me, refusing to let the panic show on my face. My bruised cheek still throbbed from where Marcus had struck me. I took a slow, deliberate breath. I was in wealth management compliance director. I handled multi-million-dollar corporate portfolios and navigated complex financial regulations every single day. I was not going to let a local precinct intimidate me over an fabricated family dispute. The heavy metal door swung open, hitting the wall with a loud bang. 2 state detectives walked in, the lead detective, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a cynical scowl, tossed a manila folder onto the table. We have a clear picture of what happened today, Ms. Vance, the lead detective said, pulling out a digital audio recorder. Your brother Marcus is a respected senator in this community. He claims you showed up at his house uninvited, demanded money from your aunt's estate, and assaulted him when he refused. He also claims you stole a check for $250,000 off his desk. Before I could speak, the detective pressed play on the recorder. Vanessa's shrill, frantic voice filled the small room. Please send officers immediately. Vanessa sobbed on the recording, her voice trembling with fake terror. My sister-in-law Zoe just went crazy. She attacked my husband. She shoved him into a glass table and stole a check from his office. Please hurry. The detective stopped the recording and slammed his hands flat on the table. Do you want to explain why a respected senator and his wife are calling 911 on you in tears? Do you want to explain why we found you at the bank trying to deposit the exact stolen check they described? I did not flinch. I looked the detective dead in the eye and let a cold, humorless smile touch my lips. If you are finished playing the amateur theater hour recording, I would like you to look at the actual physical evidence you confiscated from me. I am a licensed wealth management compliance director. I manage wealth for corporate clients whose net worth exceeds the budget of this police department. Do you really think I would engage in petty theft and assault over a single check? The younger detective scoffed. Your brother said you were bitter about being left out of the primary will. My brother is a degenerate liar, I snapped. Open the folder, look at the check. You arrested me for grand larceny. Read the name on the account the check is drawn from. The lead detective frowned, irritated by my lack of intimidation. He flipped open the manila folder and pulled out the evidence bag containing the check. Read it out loud, I demanded. Read the name of the corporate entity and the authorized signatory. The detective cleared his throat. The check is drawn from an offshore holding company, registered to a Zoe Vance, I said, leaning forward as far as the handcuffs would allow. The check is drawn from an account in my own name. Why on earth would I assault my brother and destroy his furniture to steal a check that is literally withdrawing funds from my own corporate account? The younger detective stepped away from the door. If it is your account, why is your brother claiming you stole his campaign funds? Because my brother is running a financial fraud operation, I declared. Marcus stole my identity. He used my professional licensing credentials and my social security number to open a network of offshore shell companies. That specific account holding the check you are looking at currently contains over $12 million. It was red flagged by the Internal Revenue Service 48 hours ago for severe money laundering. The lead detective let out a harsh laugh. You expect us to believe that a prominent senator is secretly laundering millions of dollars and framing his sister? I expect you to do your jobs, I fired back. Call the FBI Financial Crimes Unit right now. Run that routing number through the federal database. You will see the active red flag. You will see that the IP addresses accessing that offshore account trace directly back to the secure servers at the state capitol, where Marcus operates his political business. He set me up as the fall guy. My aunt discovered the ledger before she died. She wrote that check because that is the exact amount Marcus currently owes to an illicit underground lending syndicate. She gave it to me so I would be forced to go to the bank and discover the shell account before the federal agents raided my apartment. The room fell dead silent. The detectives exchanged a long, uneasy look. They were local cops used to domestic disputes and petty theft. They were not equipped to handle a multi-million-dollar international money laundering syndicate involving the state's most powerful political family. If you process my arrest for stealing that check, I continued, you will be officially entering a federal financial crime into your local evidence log without notifying the proper alphabet agencies. You will be interfering with an active IRS investigation. Do you want to be the officer who ruins a federal sting operation because you fell for a fake crying routine from a woman wearing stolen Chanel? The lead detective grabbed the evidence bag and the folder. Watch her! He barked at his partner before rushing out of the interrogation room. I sat in the uncomfortable chair for what felt like hours. Finally, the heavy door opened again. The lead detective walked in, looking visibly pale and sweating slightly around his collar. He walked straight behind my chair and unlocked the handcuffs. You are free to go, Ms. Vance, he said. We contacted the regional FBI field office. The routing number on that check is tied to a frozen asset protocol. The charges of assault and theft have been dropped. I walked out of the precinct, breathing in the humid evening air. I hailed in premium rideshare service. I was not going to hide. I was going to walk straight into the lion's den. The ride to the family's estate took less than 20 minutes. I stepped out of the car and walked through soaring glass doors. The estate was a monument to excessive wealth. Richard sat behind his custom-built desk. My mother, aggressive Eleanor, stood by the window. Marcus paced the floor. Vanessa sat on the sofa. No one said a word as I walked to the center of the room. Eleanor marched forward, her heels clicking against the polished hardwood floor. She snatched a thick legal document from my father's desk and threw it directly at my chest. Sign it, Zoe, my mother commanded, her voice vibrating with cold fury. Confess to embezzling the money. Confess to setting up those offshore accounts. Marcus is the face of political excellence in this state. You are 31 years old, single and expendable. I looked down at the document on the floor. It was a fully drafted confession admitting to sole culpability for the $12 million money laundering operation. Expendable? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Like when you and Dad forced me to co-sign Marcus's first business loan when I was 21 years old. He defaulted within 6 months and ruined my credit for a decade. And now you're asking me to go to federal prison for him. Marcus stopped pacing and pointed a trembling finger at me. You owe this family. I am building an empire that uplifts our people. You just push numbers around on a screen for rich clients. The state needs my vision. If I go down, the community housing project goes down. The congregation loses everything. I let out a sharp, biting laugh. Stop hiding behind the congregation. Marcus, you are not building housing for anyone but yourself. You used my professional license to create the offshore LLCs because you knew your own financial history would never pass a basic compliance check. You are a parasite feeding off our father's flock. Vanessa leaped up from the sofa, her face contorted with rage. Shut your mouth, Zoe. You are just a bitter, jealous spinster. You have always hated Marcus because he is the successful one. You are just a glorified accountant. I turned my focus onto Vanessa, and you are a glorified fence. Vanessa, do not think I have not looked into your little charity art gallery. You report hundreds of thousands of dollars in monthly art sales, but your inventory imports do not match your revenue. You are washing Marcus's dirty money through fake retail transactions. Enough, Richard suddenly boomed his deep baritone voice. He has made some financial missteps. Your sacrifice today will save your brother's calling. It will protect the legacy of this family. If you sign that document, we will ensure you are taken care of financially for the rest of your life. And if I refuse, I asked, if you do not sign that confession right now, you are no longer a Vance. We will use every resource this political family possesses to destroy your career. You will have nothing. I slowly bent down and picked up the confession document from the floor. I looked at my mother. I looked at Marcus. I gripped the top edge of the document and ripped it down the middle. I was never a Vance to you anyway, I stated, my voice ringing with finality. I was just collateral. I was just a safety net for your golden boy to fall back on when his incompetence caught up with him. You think you can destroy my career, Richard? You think you can silence me? I am a licensed forensic accountant and a fiduciary wealth advisor. I have already secured the digital footprints, tracing the offshore funds back to your political servers. I have the IP logs. I have the routing histories. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit is already reviewing the data from the bank. Marcus took a stumbling step backward. You are lying. You could not have bypassed the security protocols that fast. You used my identity, Marcus. That means I have master administrative access to every single account you opened in my name. I locked you out of the offshore portal 30 minutes ago. You cannot move a single dime of that $12 million. Keep your golden boy close, Richard, I said, turning my back on them. Because when the federal agents raid this spectacular glass palace, I am making sure he takes every single one of you down with him. The battle lines were drawn, and I was going to dismantle their fraudulent empire piece by piece. The next morning, the sun rose over Atlanta, but the heat of my family's betrayal still burned in my chest. I knew Marcus and my parents would not just sit back. They would launch a preemptive strike to discredit me. Their favorite weapon for social assassination was Kiara. By noon, I knew where she would be. The Black Excellence in Businesswomen's Luncheons was the premier networking event for Atlanta's elite female entrepreneurs, held monthly at the gated Buckhead Country Club. I was a dues-paying member. I walked into the opulent ballroom. I spotted Kiara immediately. She was holding court at a center table, surrounded by women, dripping in diamonds and influence. Nia had a complete mental breakdown yesterday, Kiara sighed. We are all so worried about her. She actually attacked Trayvon over Nana Pearl's will. She is so bitter about being single and stuck in a cubicle while Trayvon builds his empire. I did not yell. I simply opened my leather tote bag and pulled out my high-powered tablet. Trayvon thought he was a mastermind by putting his illicit financial network in my name. But his arrogance was his fatal flaw, because I was the sole legal proprietor of his shell companies. I had master administrative access to every single corporate account, including the ones he used to fund his wife's vanity projects. I tapped the screen, bypassing the security firewall. I navigated directly to the ledger for Melanin and Silk, Kiara's supposed luxury boutique. I stood up from my chair and walked slowly toward Kiara's table. The soft click of my heels against the marble floor drew the attention of the women around her. A mental breakdown, Kiara? I asked, is that the narrative Trayvon told you to spin today? Because if we are going to talk about finances and theft in front of Atlanta's finest businesswomen, I think we should talk about your boutique. Nia, you are not welcome here, Kiara hissed. I ignored her threat and placed my tablet right in the center of her table. Melanin and Silk reported $300 in retail sales last month, I stated. But here is the interesting part. According to the international freight logs, your store only imported 20 dresses from your manufacturer in China last month. So please explain how you made $300,000 selling 20 dresses. Are your garments woven from solid gold? Or are you just laundering the church tithes to hide my brother's crimes? Shut up, Kiara hissed, lunging forward to grab the tablet. I snatched it away. You parade around this city acting like a titan of industry, I continued. But you are nothing but a glorified fence for stolen money. The federal authorities were already mobilizing their elite tactical units across the state. Every single shell company was meticulously documented and handed directly to the FBI Financial Crimes Division. A waiter nervously approached the table, holding a leather billfold. "Excuse me, Mrs. Vance, your card was declined." The federal authorities were already mobilizing their elite tactical units across the state. Marcus thought his political influence could shield him, but the digital evidence was undeniable. Vanessa would soon realize that her country club status offered no protection against federal money laundering charges. Marcus thought his political influence could shield him, but the digital evidence was undeniable. "That is impossible. Run it again." "I did run it again, ma'am. The bank has frozen the account." Every single shell company was meticulously documented and handed directly to the FBI Financial Crimes Division. The federal authorities were already mobilizing their elite tactical units across the state. Richard's legacy was shattered, reduced to nothing more than a cautionary tale of unchecked political ambition. I had officially secured the future by permanently dismantling their corrupt infrastructure. I smiled. Yes, they did, because as the sole legal owner of the overarching LLC, I just froze every single corporate credit card associated with melanin and silk. Have fun paying for this lunch, Kiara. I hear the country club does not take IOS from federal suspects. Vanessa would soon realize that her country club status offered no protection against federal money laundering charges. Every single shell company was meticulously documented and handed directly to the FBI Financial Crimes Division. Kiara lost whatever remained of her polished composure. She knocked over her mimosa glass and lunged at me, her manicured hands hooked like claws. I stepped back, letting her momentum carry her forward. She crashed into the neighboring chair. I had officially secured the future by permanently dismantling their corrupt infrastructure. The elite women of Atlanta watched in stunned, horrified silence as the so-called face of black excellence was dragged out of the country club, kicking and screaming like a common criminal. I had officially secured the future by permanently dismantling their corrupt infrastructure. Marcus thought his political influence could shield him, but the digital evidence was undeniable. I picked up my tablet and walked out of the ballroom with my head held high. The battle was far from over, but the federal wheels were already turning. Vanessa would soon realize that her country club status offered no protection against federal money laundering charges. The state capitol would be reeling for months once the indictments were officially unsealed by the prosecutor. The state capitol would be reeling for months once the indictments were officially unsealed by the prosecutor. The political dynasty was fracturing under the immense weight of their own monumental greed. The political dynasty was fracturing under the immense weight of their own monumental greed.